Okay, we're live. Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
We're live. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Corporate Parenting Board. For those of you who don't know me, I am Councillor Chris Hobson and I am Chair of the Board. Can I remind all participants that we are meeting virtually. Therefore, proceedings may take slightly longer than normal, so your patience is appreciated. We are live on YouTube, so please ensure you are mindful of this in your questions and comments. Normal rules of procedure apply, and all questions to be directed through the chair, please. Thank you. We'll move on to the agenda. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence, please, Susie.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Teresa Higgins and Councillor Mika Smiles, and we also have some officer apologies, which will be noted in the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest for this meeting, please? Can't see any hands up. So we'll move on. Minutes of the Corporate Parenting Board. Can I ask, we agree these minutes? Can somebody agree the minutes for me, please?
Yes, Chair, Councillor Halawi.
Thank you, Councillor Halawi. And Councillors Udin, thank you very much indeed. Item number 4, performance against Corporate Parenting Board being deferred until the next meeting. Item number 5, we're galloping along here, this is really good. Item number 5, which is the review of Permanence Action Plan. And this is going to be done by Paula Jemson, who's Head of Looked After Children and Corporate Parenting. Thank you. I'm hoping.
Sorry, Chair, it's just Susie here. Paula has unfortunately submitted her apologies due to Ofsted. However, Siobhan is going to do a quick overview of the report for us. Siobhan Davies.
Right, thank you. Over to you then, Siobhan.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Siobhan Davies. I'm the Principal Social Worker for Children's Social Care in Middlesbrough. So yeah, I've been asked today to come and present the report for Paula, who unfortunately couldn't make it. So I'll give you a quick overview. I'm not going to go through all of the details in the report. I understand it's been circulated ahead of today's meeting and that this is one of the bi-monthly updates that the Corporate Parenting Board are already receiving. So if you do have the report in front of you, I'm going to move through to page 4, starting on progress against each theme in the action plan, to give you some updates of what's happened since January this year. So in terms of theme 1, which is around strengthening permanency in our social work practice, some of the key things just to pull out of the report here is that our our training programmes continued, and there's been a real focus on permanence for children in our care, and strengthening practice have been in delivering workshops across the whole workforce to upskill staff in that area. We've commissioned Berry to support children's emotional health. It's an online assessment tool that's used to inform assessment and care plans. It'll consider the mental health, behaviour, emotional well-being, relationships, risk and attachment of children. Since that's been rolled out in February, there's been 81 Berry tools completed so far, and the numbers continuing to rise, which is great. We've got some revised practice standards for staff in children's services, and that are open to the partnership as well, to have a look at what good looks like when we're working with children who are in our care and care leavers. We've successfully recruited 3 permanent social workers to the Looked After Children's service, and they will start in post in April 22. There's been a full review of the Looked After Children's service by our Audit to Excellence team in January and February. What the audits found, that there's been significantly reduced levels of inadequacy with increasing levels of good findings within the audits. As part of the audit process, children and young people are now being consulted to ask for their views. And what was found last time was that 87.5% of children consulted in the audit process said their lives have got better as a result of having a social worker. And 12.5% had said their lives had stayed the same. We've also recently ran, and hopefully you've heard about, our practice week, which was from the 14th to 18th of March. And the focus of that practice week was around language, communication and identity, which is really important focus when thinking about children in our care and permanence. Moving on to theme 2, growing our multi-agency partnerships for permanence. We've continued to have a permanence monitoring group in place, which is well supported by Adoption Tees Valley and the IRO service. There's a strengthened reviewing process and senior management oversight of education of all looked after children, which continues to ensure that there's a reduction in fixed term exclusions, children accessing less than 25 hours of education and in unregistered educational provisions. North Yorkshire, as partners in practice, have concluded that the audit work in the fostering service and concluded decision making in respect of Reg 24 connected carers is strong. There's been a full review of the support offered to support children's emotional health. And it's clear from that review that there's a wide range of services available through the Child's Looked After Plan, SEN and the virtual school. But further work is required to develop the CAMS offer for children in our care. And the SEN team are developing a performance scorecard to report to the Director of Children's Care Quality and Performance workshops now on a monthly basis. In relation to theme 3, which is reducing drift and delay for achieving permanence, again, the Permanence Monitoring Group continues to be well embedded and supports the supported by the fostering team, the Review and Development Unit, which is the IROs and Adoption Tees Valley, and it successfully tracks all children from the point of care order being made to permanence to make sure that they move to their forever home in a timely way. And we have a commissioned social work team which has remained in place as well to support children achieving permanence as early as possible. Theme 4, which is strengthening the voice of children and young people in permanence. So we're in the process of commissioning ArcBox, which is an online platform for life story work, which will enhance the quality of the work and allow those children to be able to contribute to their own work, as well as foster carers or other agencies working with the child. And going back when we consulted on developing the Life Story Work Toolkit for children and young people, it's precisely what they asked for. They wanted an online platform somewhere they could record electronically rather than having a book that they perhaps may lose. The recruitment drive for our Children in Care Council is ongoing. In February, there was a Care Leavers event, which was really well attended by young people and celebrated their achievements. And evidence from the audits in both January and February demonstrated that direct work, life story work, is increasingly evident on children's records, which is really good progress. Theme 5, improving the way we capture data for permanency. So this happens in a few different ways. So we've got the performance report, which is delivered to Corporate Parenting Board. We've got a permanence tracker for permanence planning. We've got the legal tracker, which is used to track progression of children who are subject to care proceedings. And there's some new developments being made on LCS, which is our recording system, to develop a pathway for connected carers and special guardianship orders, which will allow for more sophisticated performance reporting, tracking and management oversight. Once all that's pulled together, it can then be updated onto a dashboard, which managers, heads of service, senior managers, anyone can access on a daily basis and get a snapshot of that up-to-date data. And the final theme, theme 6, in relation to supporting permanence in education, employment and training. This is a big one. So again, I'm just going to pull out a few of those themes. So there's strengthened joint working with virtual school, which has led to weekly reviews of children absent from school alongside health and social care. There's a NEAT clinic in place. It's held monthly and supported by the Youth Offending Service, Virtual School, SEND, Work Readiness, 13 housing and some local providers. Virtual School Annual Conference took place on the 11th of February 22. I was quite lucky to have got a place at that conference. It was amazing. Designated Teachers Handbooks being published on the 11th of February, as well as a carer and an adoptive parent handbook, which is being published too. And there's now a process in place to fast track EHCP assessments for all children in care. So what's that telling us then? So what's the impact and what's the performance data telling us? So overall, in the last 12 months, the looked after population's reduced. And since 2020, there's been a 28.3% reduction in the overall number of children in care, which means we're closing the gap on our statistical neighbours. Since the 1st of April 21, there's been 24 adoption orders which have been secured, which includes 4 children of BAME, 4 children of sibling groups of 2, 2 children who are 4+, and 1 with significant health needs. We have a further 36 children progressing to adoption with placement orders, of which only 1 child does not yet have a confirmed link. There's been a total of 64 children secure permanence through granting of special guardianship orders in the past 12 months. In connected carers, we've got 109 children currently in placement, which is reduced from 212 in 2020. There's 41 children who are currently placed at home with parents, and again that's a reduction from 52 in October 21 and from 99 in September 2020. There's been no looked after children permanently excluded from school in the past 5 years. And there's only 1.7% of children, so that's 9 children, who are receiving less than 25 hours education, of which there's an action plan and oversight from the virtual school with regards to each child. So the risks that have been highlighted is the increase in demand across the service and across the Tees Valley region, and risks associated with the recruitment of the staff in looked after and care leaving service. And in terms of the next steps, so life story work, compliance and quality to continue to be driven. Progress of the commissioning of ArcBox to support the quality of life story work, which will be accompanied by training, which we've got ongoing at the moment. The ongoing reduction and tracking of the number of children residing in external residential placements. We want to progress the Permanence Action Plan and report to Improvement Board and Corporate Parenting Board. Practice leads are to be deployed in the service to improve the quality of care plans for looked after children. And we've just had a recent advert out internally to recruit a permanence practice champion. Participation people are to develop the attendance and provide Corporate Parenting Board with a proposed plan for the Children in Care Council. We want recruitment of permanent staff and practice week to support staff development. So that's the report, and I'll take any questions. If I can't answer them, I will find the answer out for you.
Chair, I believe you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much indeed, Siobhan, for that report. A very positive report, but still looking at things that we still need to do. We can never be too positive about things. We always need to look and see what extra things we need to do. I'm very happy that we've managed to recruit 3 permanent social workers. That is excellent information, and it shows that we are moving in the right direction, because we're now getting people that are interested in the jobs, whereas previously I don't think we had many people that were interested. Right, I shall take any questions. Have I got anybody? Councillor Udin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. Thanks, Siobhan. That was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's a great report. Yeah, I'm really pleased. Yeah. One question and one comment, yeah, if I can make. Yeah. First of all, the 3 permanent social worker, I wonder, are they subject to our new initiative, which is cash incentive?
So I
Can you
believe,
hear me okay? Yeah?
although I will double check with Paula to get you the definite answer, but my understanding is that these 3 social workers moving into the CLA service in April are not part of the new initiative with the £5,000 payment. They're actually part of the Social Work Academy. So when we have newly qualified social workers starting within the organisation, we host them in an academy for 6 months to help transition from university into employment. And they'll be moving on in April into the CLA service. But I will double check just to see if there's any other staff who've been recruited through that initiative.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah. The other one, I just wanted to comment, in terms of the adoption, I think you're doing a really great job there as well. And with the adoption, especially, when the sibling group of 3, 4, it's difficult. Plus with the complex needs, So I think you manage them all really well. And obviously, as you mentioned, the number of them are in the process as well. So it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. That's obviously, I think you deserve a congratulations, obviously, director and so on. Yeah, everyone together. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Uddin. Did you want to come in on that one, Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that Vicky Davison-Boyd is on the call from Adoption Tees Valley, and all of the adoption work is done in partnership with Vicky's with the R Regional Adoption Agency, of which Vicky's the service manager. So, just to say thank you to them for helping us move the children on to permanence via adoption. Great work from Children's Services and great work from Adoption Tees Valley. So, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you for that, Sue. Anybody else wish to say so? Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. A very short statement, if I may, followed by an equally short question. First of all, I would like to say that I did ask Sue about the new school up by Environment City, and I've had a full response. I fully understand and I fully support Sue in this. Thank you. The question I've got now is, I was recently asked by a member of the public if we had a child in care that was living in Wales. And my response was, honestly, I don't know, and I couldn't discuss it even if I did. I just want to know, was that the correct response? Thank you.
Sue, would you like to come on that one? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Cooper, thank you very much for that. I think that that's absolutely a very non-committal response, which is exactly the response that should be given. And you don't, you can't know the details anyway of every child who's in our care. And I think that's absolutely the right response to have given. Very neutral, very non-committal. And thank you very much for doing that.
Thank
Thank you.
Any further questions? I can't see anybody else's hand up. Right, we shall now move on. The next item on the agenda is the review of the Sufficiency Action Plan, and then going over to Claire Walker for this, please.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. Hope you're well. Just let me get my paper up. Sorry if I'll start again. Like I always do, I've just provided the highlight report. So the first page doesn't change and just gives the responses. So I'll start from sort of page 3, which gives the updates that have happened. So for theme 1 around strengthening commissioning, I was hoping to have taken a market engagement plan to DMT, but unfortunately that I've had to push that deadline back. So we're now looking at providing a paper to DMT in April, and this will just be around our strengthening of engaging and talking to the market. We know that residential and fostering, especially residential, is a tough market at the moment, so we need to ensure that we're increasing our relationship management with them and making sure that we're aware of what's happening. We do have a couple of new homes opening in Middlesbrough. We're linked in with those and speaking to those providers, trying to find out sort of the provisions that they're going to be delivering, when they're going to be opening, and obviously, so if anyone has any questions around those, we can answer them. But obviously it's just more potential options opening in Middlesbrough, so for us to be aware. Theme 2, which is around increasing placements closer to home, the regional framework. So the 12 local authorities are working collectively in order to procure a formal independent fostering framework. So that is ongoing at the moment and has just recently closed, and formal evaluation is currently ongoing, which will see a live framework commencing from the 1st of July, which is really positive. And obviously work continues with the region to understand and identify any opportunities for collaboration. And obviously we've got the impending setup of the regional commissioning hub, so we continue to work and be involved in that. Growing early intervention and prevention, really positive news. Our PAWS contract is now being extended and is also now includes a Startwell worker who's going to work specifically with women who are pregnant, and that will actually be part of our pre-birth forum, which is a real positive move, and I think that's really welcomed for us. So I'm really excited to see how that impacts on our families and children. Theme 4 is around improvement placements and support for care leavers. So we're obviously undertaking contract monitoring visits of unregulated placements, and they'll be reviewed again in 6 months. We've got NIAS, we've commissioned NIAS to visit these homes and ensure we hear the voice of the child and have another independent check of those placements, given that at this moment in time they're not regulated. And obviously a regional meeting with Ofsted was held just to discuss the upcoming changes. So obviously the unregulated provision will become regulated. So we're starting to work with Ofsted around what does that mean, how can we support the market to ensure that many of those providers become regulated, and I think that'll be around 2023 that will start to happen, but a lot of prep work going into that. Theme 5, which is around enhancing learning, and the virtual school attends all PEPs to support early identification of SEND and prevent suspensions. And we've got joint working with the inclusion team to help school to support children looked after and SEND effectively. And finally, building on our fostering capacity, I know there's been an internal recruitment campaign undertaken, so hopefully that will see an increase in our carers and see an increase in in-house placements. Obviously residential is still getting reported on weekly, and obviously as we've approached the last week of the financial year, I'm going to look to provide a summary of what that's how that's sorry, I get in a flow and then I just lose it. I'm going to produce an annual overview of placement activity, which I think will be really useful for us moving forward in our sufficiency in identifying gaps. Staffing levels obviously continues to be a pressure, as I think it is for most markets, unfortunately. So we're just working closely with providers to ensure that there's no impact on service delivery. And obviously the next steps, take an opportunity, I think, to review the action plan that we've got, just to make sure it is fit for purpose and meeting our needs. And obviously just ensuring that any change controls are secured around formally altering any changes or timescales or adding new projects. So that's a whistle stop tour, because I know I do talk very fast, but if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Claire. I have just one question for you from that. New homes, are these new homes private?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but we still negotiate with them to make sure that they do exactly what we would do ourselves, basically.
So what we do is I like to meet, obviously, anybody who's moving into the area and looking at opening a home. The council has no control on them coming into the area and opening, but obviously working with them and understanding the services and the young people that needs they're trying to meet, there may be an opportunity that we might want to specifically commission them for Middlesbrough so that it delivers that resource. So it's more around understanding who they are, what they're coming in to deliver, and then we work with the service area. So for example, we've recently had a meeting with a new home that's opening with representative from Futures for Families, just to find out a bit more, and we obviously make sure that we're aware of when the registration is going to happen and currently taking them through an accreditation process in case we wish to spot purchase from them. But I think it's more about us understanding that potentially those beds could be filled by people from outside of Middlesbrough as well. So I've made contact with obviously the Tees Valley, my equivalents in the Tees Valley, just to make sure that if there's any interest maybe from a sub-regional point of view as well. So whilst it might get filled with children from out of area, it might not be significantly from out of area, like somebody from Blackpool or further afield coming. So it's just around that whole sufficiency agenda and making sure we're aware of what's happening, because obviously we're only very small. We've never really had large numbers of external providers, so it's just making sure we're aware of that market if it's growing.
Thank you, Claire. Right, I'll open up to the floor. Has anybody got any questions, please? Can't see any hands up. There you are. You got let off very lightly there.
I think that's 3 in a row now. I'm gonna run out at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on to the next item, and that is item 7, Adoption Tees Valley Biannual Report, and this is by Vicky Davidson-Boyd.
Good afternoon, Chair, and to the whole board. Thank you for inviting me along today. And I think Susie is going to share the slides that I've presented. I've just really drawn a few slides to sort of highlight and update the information that's presented in the biannual report. But what I have done is I've updated the figures to the end of December, because by the time I was preparing for today, we had our information for Q3, and so I've been able to give more up-to-date information than is in the biannual report. So the report is for the period April to September 2021, and as I say, the figures that I'm going to share with you today are up to the end of December 2021. One of the areas that I wanted to just kind of mention before I talk to some of the information in my slides is just to kind of update the board that ATV did go through a review in 2021, and that was because the Regional Adoption Agency was 3 years into its kind of implementation by that point in time. And so we had an independent review, which was facilitated by somebody independent of the RAA within Stockton Borough Council. And he was part of the transformation team, but he supported an analysis against the original objectives that were set out in the RAA. The findings are in the report. I've referenced to those in the biannual report, but I think just worthy of commenting on one or two of the kind of key areas that were really identified for ATV and for how the RAA has progressed and is progressing for adoption in the region. The positives are that there were more adoptions of children from care than had been the case for the preceding 3 years. And in fact, I think it was the preceding 5 years, actually. So adoption activity has increased in the region, and we'll go on to talk about Middlesbrough in a few minutes. I think one of the things that we were pleased to kind of review and identify from the analysis was that a broader range of children were able to be adopted from care. And the review highlighted that 20% of children over the age of 5 had been adopted from care. And we'd made quite significant increase in the number of sibling groups who've been placed together as well. So that's kind of one of the successes and something that we've been pleased about. The timeliness wasn't identified to have improved overall. We hadn't made the impact in terms of timeliness, and that's something that we've been really working on within ATV and with our partners. Really throughout last year, we work on it continually, but also in response to the review to really look at the factors and help us understand what we can do differently. I think it's probably worth saying that some of the children who were part of the timescales that were under review were children who had been placed in their timescales. They had achieved adoptions. They were able to be within the data that was reviewed. However, some of those children had waited a considerable period of time to be adopted. And again, the positives are that those children were able to be adopted. So there are some factors there that we're kind of looking at, and we have really looked hard and worked together with the partner agencies, as I say. We've also had done a little piece of peer work with Adoption in Merseyside, really to just reflect on processes and help us look at how we've been doing our work, really to strengthen both agencies. The financial analysis of Adoption Tees Valley was that we were discovered to be providing good value for money for the 5 partner local authorities in this region. ATV was identified to be operating below the average cost per unit cost of adoption. That was something that was kind of looked into and generated from available and published data. So that was something, again, that was positive, although I think on the other side of that, we need to make sure that we actually have sufficient staffing resource in order to be able to meet the demand. And the board listened really carefully to that. And in fact, there has been increased investment subsequently, particularly around areas of adoption support and around assessment of adopters. And the target for that is to continue to look at our own internal sufficiency of adopters so that we approve sufficient adopters for our own resources. So I wanted to just kind of highlight that before I talk about how adoption activity has been in this region and for Middlesbrough over the last 9 months. And Siobhan's presented the report around permanency and permanency planning, so she has highlighted some of that information. So the first slide, which I've got to present, is around the number of adoption orders granted. And this is really just drawn from the scorecard that we use in order to kind of look at our information and how progress is going for our 5 partner local authorities. As you'll see, the grey little area of the bar charts is referenced Middlesbrough, and this enables us to look at how adoption orders and adoption placements have been progressing over the period of the last few years and for this period of year to date. So you can see that Middlesbrough had a decline in adoption numbers. We'd had 19 in 2018-19 and then 16, and 2021, I think a result of a lot of the focused activity on permanence planning and actually improvements that were generated through PMG, which Siobhan has already identified that ATV do attend PMG, and that's been quite a focused meeting which has helped improve monitoring and performance and resolution of any issues that needed to be resolved in order to help children move on. And we begin to see the activity increasing in those adoption order numbers. So last year, 25 adoption orders for Middlesbrough. And by the end of December 21, we had 20 adoption orders. I thought Siobhan had presented 21 actually, and it's made me think I need to just go away and double check that we've got the right figures. I think what's really encouraging is if we move over to look at the children placed for adoption, and already within the first 9 months of this year, that we are considering, there have been the same number of children placed for adoption as were placed in the whole of the previous year. So again, this is evidence of how the working together and the focus being brought through PMG is actually helping children to achieve that permanence plan where adoption is their plan. So could I move on to the next slide, Susie? I think we've missed one there. Oh, yeah, it's the early permanence one. Sorry, I've got something that's covering part of my slides, which, sorry. Okay, early permanence. I wanted to talk a little bit about this, just to let you know that we've really reviewed early permanence. We've been working quite strategically to achieve more earlier permanence for children through our planning together with the 5 partner local authorities, and obviously here for Middlesbrough Children's Services, and for those children where it is possible for them to have an early permanence plan. And by that, what we mean is that children are able to be placed with their likely permanent carers through a temporary adoption approval under Reg 25A of the care planning regs prior to the granting of a placement order. We're doing more work and we're looking more at the opportunity to develop concurrent planning within this region, which would be really enabling children to be placed with carers who can support a reunification plan or would go on to adopt that child if, in fact, reunification isn't possible and the child is going to remain in care and it has an adoption plan agreed by the local authority agency decision maker. So we've done a lot of strategic work. It has been agreed as an outcome of the review as one of the strategic priorities for the board of Adoption Tees Valley, and that's really reflective of national adoption work. There was a national adoption strategy published in 2021, and early permanence was one of the key strategic priorities that the government wants to roll out, and for more children to obtain and achieve earlier permanence with their adoptive parents. So that's our priority, that's our strategic direction. We have had some challenges in relation to early permanence within the last 9 to 12 months. And our numbers have gone down at this point in time, and we're kind of really working with some of the kind of national agenda to look at how we strengthen early permanence. There's particular reasons that we think that the numbers have gone down, and that's because there've been some quite challenging cases where children have returned to birth parents, and that has created us to review, reflect and learn and look at how we need to strengthen the preparation of adopters. But we're in the process of that and working with the National Centre, with across the regional adoption agency heads and with wider partners, Core and Bath and the DFE, to actually look at developing more strategic approaches to early permanence. So through that opportunity, we've had more funding into the region, and we've been able to work together with Adopt North East and with Coast to Coast to secure an early permanence coordinator in the region. And in fact, we are also just at the moment considering a bid to secure some funding for a concurrent planning project, but that's in its very early stages at this point in time. In terms of outcomes, the information there on the chart shows that Middlesbrough have been achieving some early permanence for some of their children, and in fact have had 2 children placed for early permanence within this year to date. Okay, Susie, could we move on to the next slide? So we've talked about children who've been placed, we've talked about children who've been adopted. We like to look at and consider planning for sufficiency for children and thinking about the needs of children who are coming through and requiring adoption. And what we need to plan for is for sufficient adopters for the children. So we look at placement orders and we look at agency decisions that adoption is the local authority plan for the child. Again, Middlesbrough figures are in the grey in these charts, and last year there were 28 children who had a placement order granted through the courts. By the end of December, that number was 21, so about the same rate of placement order granting up to the end of December as had been the case in the previous year. What we have seen is we've seen a drop off in the number of agency decisions that adoption is the child's plan. And I'm going to come on to talk about 1 or 2 of the challenges in a few minutes, just for the Corporate Parenting Board's awareness. Okay, could I have the next slide? So, Middlesbrough, what's going well? Well, I think as Siobhan's highlighted through her information, we certainly feel that the number of adoptions from care is really increasing, and clearly that's got to be related to those children for whom it's right that they have an adoption plan. But what we want to achieve is that for those children who have an adoption plan, we're able to find a family for them, and they are able to progress to being placed. The number of children actually being placed for adoption is increasing for Middlesbrough. And early permanence, although we are in a little dip at the moment, early permanence has overall increased for Middlesbrough, which is the right direction of travel. What I wanted to kind of update, and I haven't really given any kind of slides to show this, is that timeliness of adoption for Middlesbrough is also really improving. Over the last year, we've seen some real improvement in the number of children, the timescales for children from the time at which they have a placement order to the time at which they're matched with an adoptive family. And again, I think it's really reflective of the work that's gone on together to ensure that the right information is provided to Adoption Tees Valley in a really timely way, and that we're able therefore to look both internally for families, and if we have no internal families available, that we're able to go and look certainly within the region with our partner voluntary adoption agencies, and if they don't have any opportunity for families, then we're able to place children further away. But our first port of call is always to look internally and then to work with our partner voluntary adoption agencies in order to secure a placement within the region. So for placement order to match over the last year, the timescales have gone down by almost 100 days on average for those children. So previously in the previous year, the average days were 301 days between a placement order and finding a family and matching them with the children, and it is now 203 days for Middlesbrough, so that's a real achievement again. And for the timescale where we look at when did the child become looked after and when did they move in with their adoptive family, we've seen a small reduction in that timescale also. It's not quite so dramatic as placement order to match, but 385 days previously, and we're down to 380. And the real positive is those timescales are ahead of the government targets. So things are going really well. We're securing more adoptions for children and we're securing them in a timely way. And that's as a result of a lot of really hard and partnership working together. That's the direction that we want. I think Siobhan mentioned that almost every child is achieving an adoption placement at this point in time. There are 32 children with a placement order, and there's only one of those children who hasn't got a link. So again, that's a really positive outcome. And I think overall in Adoption Tees Valley, this is something we are achieving some real successes, and we are moving our children on and we are finding the right family for the children. And for Middlesbrough, that's really working. All of the information is going in the right direction. Some of the challenges that we've had in ATV and that have really impacted on Middlesbrough, certainly since the Christmas period, there has been a national ruling through the courts, which is called the Somerset ruling. And this is a ruling which is relating to the regulatory position of receipt of medical information by the agency medical advisor prior to the agency decision maker making their decision that adoption is the child's plan. And nationally, this case was highlighted in the late autumn, and it's led to nationally a significant review across many, many cases. All children who've either got an adoption plan or who have moved on, achieved a placement order, placed for adoption, and even potentially adopted. And local authorities have had to review all of the agency decisions that they've made and consider whether they were compliant with the regulatory position of in relation to the agency medical advisor. It's created delay for children. In fact, there are a lot of children for whom the agency decision was compliant, but we do have a number of children for whom the agency decision wasn't compliant with that particular regulation. And that's very much across the national picture as well as across the regional picture. It's been something that's the focus of quite a lot of national attention and consideration, both within the courts and the judiciary, but also with the Department for Education as well. So at the moment, we're awaiting the outcome of a review of the Somerset ruling to guide local authorities on how they should progress and what remedial action they need to take, if any, in relation to those cases where the agency decision was made without the correct formulation of the agency medical advisor advice. I think I just do want to say the agency decision makers in almost every case have the medical report, but there is a requirement that they also have a summary from the medical advisor. So that's caused some delay, and we will expect that in this final quarter of this year that we will see some children who would have otherwise been moved through and to their adoption placements will have a small delay while we await the outcome of this. In response to this, within Middlesbrough, I've worked really closely with Paula Jemison and with Ben Short and also with Sue Butcher, the agency decision maker, to review and consider children for whom we could look to place those children via early permanence in order to enable them to be able to move in and be placed with their adoptive family as was planned within a reasonable time scale, so that we're not having children held up and children not able to form those important attachments at the earliest possible stage. So that's been quite a challenge within our region, not just with Middlesbrough. It's been a challenge across all 5 local authorities, and it's been a challenge nationally in this period of time. The other challenge for ATV has been that the recruitment of adopters has been lower this year. We think that's a response to the pandemic. We had a high level of response and inquiry in the first year of the pandemic, but we've seen that really drop off in the second year of the pandemic. And we're not alone. That's quite, again, reflective of the national picture in adoption, but it's also reflective of the picture in fostering services as well. That's what we've identified talking to our local fostering services across the region. So if I could just move on to the final slide now, Susie. Thank you. So our areas for development, the things that we are looking to improve, to continue to work on for strengthening adoption practice. As I've mentioned, we're looking to continue to work on early permanence and really broaden our early permanence offer to children and secure more adopters who are able to consider early permanence for children, including through concurrent planning. We've strengthened our work with fostering services, very much related to the work on early permanence, but also more broadly in relation to how children are moved from their foster carers into adoptive placements, and that we're working much more closely. And we now have a working group which is led by the ATV recruitment manager, who's now working with all of the fostering services managers across the region to actually look at strengthening practice and helping children move on in the right way. Related to that, we've been implementing the Moving On to Adoption model, which is a University of East Anglia recognised model, and we're using this model to help children move in a planned way, but with increasing strengthening of relationships between adopters and foster carers, which the evidence is showing that that's very beneficial to children and to their emotional well-being, both during placement but in the longer term. We've strengthened our own assessment pathway internally, and we've provided more resource to help adopters feel more equipped and understand the lifelong needs of children. We've commissioned the Adopter Hub from Pact Charity, but we've also done quite a lot of work internally in order to help our adopters be more equipped and more prepared for the lifelong needs of their adopted child. And we're particularly focusing on strengthening their understanding of the potential needs for that children may have for contact in the future with birth family, but also the importance of having information about their early history, and that they may well go on to have some emotional needs related to those issues. And one of the things that we're trying to encourage all adopters to do is to see accessing adoption support in the future as being a kind of norm in adoption and something that will really help them. Life storybooks. Siobhan's talked a little bit about life storybooks and commissioning from Middlesbrough of ARC Adoption to provide digital tools. Within this period, life storybook work has been transferred back to Children's Social Care from Adoption Tees Valley. We reviewed this work and we were able to kind of really identify that it wasn't the right model for ATV to be producing the life storybook. Actually, that needed to be the child social worker, and it needed to be commenced at the time the child became looked after and was progressing through their own care pathway. And that work has now fully transferred back to children's social workers. And it's really good to hear how that's progressing as I kind of listen to that presentation. I think one of the things that really kind of just helped us finally recognise that that was very important was we did some work with young teenagers who were adopted in ATV, and they told us that they felt it was really important that life storybooks were undertaken by somebody who knew them well at that early stage. So the next area that we've really been continuing to work and develop in is adoption support. have highlighted there celebrating education support to adopted children and working with the virtual schools. I think I've presented to this board previously around the value of the education support worker who's now co-funded by all 5 virtual schools. But we recently had an adoption support audit independently undertaken from within the RAA system, a commissioned service. And, you know, we had some real recognition of this was seen as an exemplary part of our adoption support service and something that's quite innovative and not being done in other areas of the country. And what we know is there's real impact of that education support service. So what we're looking at the moment in our adoption support work is strengthening our sort of strategic partnership working to enable us to all respond better to the support needs of the adopted children as and when they arise and in a timely way. And finally, we've really begun to kind of do some work with children, teenage children in ATV. We've brought a group of young people together, and what I've done there is I've linked for you so that you can go and watch it in your own time, a film that's been made by some young people through ATV, and that film is around their experiences in school of being adopted and how it feels to be adopted and what they need to be helped by schools and by those around schools and around education. So it's a really interesting film to watch, but this work has provided the platform for us to bring together a children's group, and that's now a piece of work that's underway and developing within ATV, and I hope to be able to kind of report and just let people know, and hopefully for those young people potentially to present to this board themselves in the future. So I'll take any questions around the adoption activity.
Thank you, Vicky. That was another really good report there, and I'm sure that somebody will have some questions for you. Yes, Councillor Udin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I know you mentioned a couple of, you know, the points, you know, obviously, as part of the medical reports and so on. That's national issues, obviously. That's everybody suffering with that, you know. That's fine. The other thing as well, the life story, I think I'm really pleased about the life story work because I've always been passionate about the life story work with children, you know, when I was involved in the past, because life story work is the unique identity with children. So it should be done by, as you said, social workers. So I think that's taken on. So it's absolutely brilliant. And obviously they would make sure that life story book goes with the child as soon as the child's placed. Yeah. So that's brilliant.
That's right. Yeah. We've got a process in place, and we've done some kind of joint training together in order to kind of embed that process and reinforce that process. We've produced some guidance for social workers about particularly doing an adoption life story book. But it's really positive to see the work that's going on for all children in Middlesbrough around life story. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think once we began to really unravel it and look at some of the challenges we had around life story, it was really evident that actually that needed to be with a child social worker and that needed to be held at a much earlier time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Anyway, congratulations to you and the full team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Davidson, please. Councillor Davidson, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I must apologise for being late for a start, but I've got in as soon as I possibly could with this machine today. I don't know what's up with it. But there's only one question. I missed part of your presentation, but there's one question I would like to ask that's in my head at the moment. With regards to adoption, how many teenagers would like to be adopted and how many are? Or is it a no-go area?
Oh, such an interesting question. We at the moment, not for Middlesbrough, I have to say, but for another of our local authorities, are now commencing an adoption assessment of foster carers who wish to adopt the child in their care who is a teenager. Actually, it's a point of great celebration. So I think traditionally and typically adoption is seen as activity for younger children. I think what you missed potentially at the beginning of my presentation was me reflecting that through the review of Adoption Tees Valley, we have placed and had adopted a larger number of children who are over 5, but your question is around teenagers. And the honest answer is I don't know how many teenagers in this region would wish to be adopted, but it's developing practice, and it's something that the National Adoption System is talking about through something called the Adoption and Special Guardianship Leadership Board. There is quite a lot of discussion. I attended a conference not so long ago, which was actually a transracial conference, and it was with colleagues in America. In America, there are many more teenagers who are adopted from care, and that's practice that's quite common. So I think it's something that we would like to embrace and stretch, because of course adoption for children is not, it's not up to 18, it's not up to 21, it's not up to 25, it's lifelong, and it provides that family for children lifelong, and that's so important for children. So my own view is we shouldn't be seeing this as contained for very much younger children, but that is development work, and that's about culture, custom, practice, and how we respond to that kind of progress and development and those requests. As I say, one request at the moment, and we're really celebrating that.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
All right, Carl Snowball, I think you have got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, really. Subject, you were talking about the Somerset ruling. Subject to that review of that ruling, is there an expectancy in the service that permanency for a child the process might be elongated because of that ruling? And then secondly, you mentioned about the early permanence as a way, sort of a workaround. Is early permanence or foster to adopt a means by which we're not subject to those rulings?
Right, so good question. Will it be elongated? And is that your question to say, in general, moving forward, are we going to see longer timescales for children because of that? The answer to that is a very, very hopeful no, because I think what we have to do is we have to go back to basics and design processes that ensure that children are having their adoption medicals at an earlier stage, and that everybody is working together on that. That's the agency medical advisors, that's the local authority, and Adoption Tees Valley. We've already had quite considerable discussion about that to try and achieve that, and we haven't got our final outcome to that process yet, but we will have a strengthened process to ensure that actually we get those children booked in for adoption medicals, and the medical advisors are very clear about when ADM is booked. So we've already done some work around that, and for me, I think it's not an option to elongate children's timescales to respond to this. I happen to think we may see some regulatory change in the future around this particular issue, but you know, to reassure, at this point in time, no child moves to their adoptive family without the adopters having met with the medical advisor, the child's had a full adoption medical, everybody's very clear about the child's health needs, and the adopters have been advised about, you know, what that's likely to mean for them and their care of the child in the future. So that's the answer to that. And then, is early permanence a workaround, and does it affect it? What early permanence has enabled us to do is to progress with children's plans and to achieve that placement while we await the ruling and the direction that we need to receive from the President of the Family Law Division around what he expects to take place. I think what I can say to you is the feedback we've had via Core and Bath, who've done some centralised work on this, is no child's plan will change as a result of this, nor has it changed. that children's plans have been very carefully considered by agency decision makers, and so I don't think anybody feels that there's that it's unsafe to look to progress children through early permanence to the already identified adopters who are awaiting them, and all of the work that's gone on to share information to ensure that the adopters are fully aware of the child's needs and that that is the right family for the child. So I think at the moment early permanence is available to us, and I think has been a really positive use of early permanence in order to help those children to move and be with their adoptive families. And I think in the future, I'm hopeful that what we'll do is we'll actually just kind of really strengthen the process much earlier. And we're in discussion with CCG about that as well, to enable the medical advisors to have the capacity to see children at an earlier stage and produce those reports in time for the agency decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. I can't see any further hands up. Can't see a lot of you, so if anybody has any further questions, can you just speak now?
Chair, I believe Sue Butcher would like to make. Oh, sorry, Chair, it's just Susie. I believe Sue Butcher would like to
we
make.
will move on to the next agenda item.
Oh. Sorry, Chair, it's just Susie here. Can you hear me?
Yep, Sue, do you want to come in now?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say very clearly that as
I can
agency.
hear you. Can you not hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chair.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Chair? No. Susie, shall I answer?
I can hear you, Sue, yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Chair. Just wanted to say, as agency decision maker for Middlesbrough, I am committed to moving through the decisions to recommend that the child's care plan should be adoption as swiftly as we can. The Somerset ruling has has meant that there's been a significant amount of work to make sure that our processes are compliant with adoption regulations. There has been, I wouldn't say a delay in making decisions. There's been decisions that have been stopped for a little while, but then I've managed to pull most of them back. Just about all of them back, so that child's plans are progressing, but it has meant that there's been a considerable amount of work behind the scenes. But as my original comment was, I am absolutely doing everything I can and more. I'm committed to making sure that children's plans are not delayed, and that's with the support of colleagues in Middlesbrough and Vicky from ATV. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much for that. I'll go back and just make sure that nobody has any questions. And I can't see anybody. But we will now move on to the next item agenda, which is item agenda 8, No Wrong Door. This is going to be presented by Abby Hennessy. Correct? You're on mute, Abby.
Yes, that's right. I'm happy to present. I think Susie's got my slides, so is that all right, Susie, or do you want me to share my screen?
Can you see that okay, Abby?
Yeah, is it okay to put it onto slideshow?
Yeah, that's no problem. I'll do that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, thank you everyone for having me here briefly at your meeting. So I'm just going to present our findings from our pilot evaluation of No Wrong Door in Middlesbrough. So I recognise a few faces who I've interviewed as part of this evaluation, so it's good to see you. And yeah, hopefully everyone's read the report, which is on our website. So I'm just going to run through a few high-level findings here, but for more detail, please do see the report if you haven't already. Okay, so the aim of this evaluation was to study the rollout of No Wrong Door in a local authority outside of where it was developed. We wanted to understand whether it could be delivered in a new area, what the challenges were, and what do staff and families think of this new model. So this particular study was not designed to understand whether No Wrong Door makes a difference to outcomes. So this is the question we'll ask in the next phase of our evaluation, which is taking place currently. So what did we do in this pilot evaluation? So before and 6 months after Futures for Families opened, we carried out interviews and focus groups with staff and families. We did a staff survey and we did some observations of meetings in the Futures for Families service. And we also collected data about recruitment, training, and the young people who have been supported by the service. Thank you. So these are some of our findings around how No Wrong Door was implemented in Middlesbrough. So there was the provision of intended placement types and the recruitment of almost all intended staff. Staff received comprehensive training and regular development days, and staff were observed to work restoratively, so doing with rather than to or for, making decisions with families, listening to young people's voice and aspirations to drive practice. And family strengths were also highlighted. Support offered was seen to be flexible, creative and tailored. The provocations, non-negotiables, paperwork and processes were tailored to Middlesbrough's local context and priorities in partnership with North Yorkshire County Council. And the age range was adapted to 11 to 18 in Middlesbrough. So on the right, you can see in orange the posts which were vacant when we collected this data. So here's some of the challenges that we found through this pilot evaluation. So most Futures for Families staff reported feeling confident to use the model, but only 56% of staff reported feeling that they had enough time to take full advantage of the model. And some competing demands between the outreach and residential work was one area of challenge. And there was some confusion over whether to continue to use signs of safety and some uncertainty over the referral or eligibility criteria for Futures for Families. It was sometimes hard to find a suitable local foster care placement, and there were some changes in key worker due to staff turnover, and transitioning out of the service needed to be carefully managed to avoid further disruption. So on the right, here's a few quotes from different people who we spoke to during this evaluation. So one senior leader shared that another young person couldn't get as much outreach support as they might have done because of the demands of caring for a young person who needed a lot of support within the hub. That's really kind of speaking to the challenges of doing outreach work and also working with young people at the hub as well. And then a Futures for Families staff member shared, we seem to be getting residential cases in emergencies for extended periods of time that would normally not be part of No Wrong Door due to not meeting the criteria. So this is speaking to a little bit of some confusion around the eligibility referral criteria for the service. And then a foster carer shared, the key worker said, "I'm here for you, I'm going to support you. You're moving to foster carer and then moving from here." And then she moved on from her job, which was quite a letdown for the young person. That's speaking to some of the turnover within the service. And a social worker shared, for mine, it's been quite an abrupt end for these kids who already had quite a lot of rejection. So just thinking about the transition out of the service as well. So now speaking briefly about what staff and families thought about the model. So most staff felt positive about the model and the training. The life coach and communication support worker were particularly seen as helpful and overcame external waiting lists. And the police analyst was also really beneficial to address issues such as missing episodes. There appeared to be a high level of support for the model from senior management and leadership, and staff reported good relationships with partners and social work teams. Providing a flexible service that's accessible outside of usual working hours and responding quickly to crises on evenings and weekends was a unique and valued feature for families in particular. Some young people who had a previous lack of trust in adults developed positive relationships with Futures for Families staff. Staff changes and COVID-19 could be barriers to engaging some young people, and not all young people were really clear about the plans or goals that they had within the service. Staff and families identified that No Wrong Door had the potential to improve the quality of support, reduce risk and increase safety, and improve outcomes for young people. So one parent shared, well, the young person couldn't talk to her, so there must be something there because the young person doesn't talk to anybody. The young person tells their key worker more things than they tell me. So that's a parent describing some positive support that their child's received through the service. And a social worker shared he engaged well with the outreach worker at the initial visit, was really keen. And again, I think there was a gap in revisiting that young person again. So, you know, a 3-week gap, so he lost interest. So just speaking to the kind of consistency that's needed between the key worker and young person to keep that relationship going. So what are our recommendations based on this pilot evaluation? So our report is available on our website and a summary is in the SFPC newsletter. And recommendations include the importance of ensuring staffing capacity for placements and outreach support, clear guidance on using No Wrong Door alongside any existing practice model, as well as a comprehensive training and guidance for partners and referring practitioners. And based on good practice in Futures for Families, we recommend regular opportunities for No Wrong Door teams to revisit the No Wrong Door principles, the non-negotiables, distinguishers and provocations. And our next steps is producing a podcast about the findings, evaluating the impact of No Wrong Door on the likelihood of children and young people becoming looked after, placement length and changes, and education and employment. And this is in Rochdale, Norfolk, Warrington and Redcar and Cleveland. Thank you. And yeah, happy to briefly answer any questions, and also I can leave an email address if anyone wants to follow up with anything that you think of after.
Thank you very much indeed. Have we got any questions, please? Can't see any hands up at all. No, no questions. Thank you very much indeed for that presentation, Abby. Much appreciated. So we'll move on to item 9, which is private fostering. And I don't know whether Sue, are you going to do this or is it Ben?
It's me, Chair. Thank you very much. So just to introduce myself, I'm Ben Short. I'm the interim head of safeguarding. The report has been circulated. There's an overview report and an annual review of private fostering. Just to give some context, the governance for private fostering does sit under the South Tees Safeguarding Children's Partnership. The annual report has been presented there. And what I'm here to do is to give you some information about private fostering and to ask for your help. So if people can have a reflect on some of the information they received today, and if people have ideas on raising awareness, that's my ask today. So just to take you through the overview report, as I've said, it's the annual report has been through the South Tees Safeguarding Children Partnership in June 21. And I attached a copy of the annual report for board's information. Just to give some regulatory context for board, 2005 private fostering regulations set minimum standards of private fostering, and that direction comes from the Secretary of State, and it requires the local authority, so for us in Middlesbrough, to keep a record of those children who are privately fostered, and also to provide assessment and support for them. And I've got a definition for you for private fostering. Just to be clear, privately fostered children are not children in our care, so they're not looked after. These are children who are children in need, supported at home with people that they know. So the definition of a private fostered child is one who is under the age of 16 or 18 if they're disabled, who is cared for by an adult who is not a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, or step-parent by marriage, sister or brother, where they've been cared for 28 days or more. So what this means, what the requirement here is for those children who are not cared for within their immediate family, there's a requirement of local authorities to provide services for them. And many people will remember Victoria Climbié, and there's a big emphasis on providing support to those children that are privately fostered, particularly since the tragic circumstances for her. To give you some context, in Middlesbrough, when I wrote this report in late December, there were 1,446 children who were supported by us as children in need. At that point, 420 children had a child protection plan and 513 children were looked after in our care. There were only 4 children that we were aware of who were privately fostered in Middlesbrough. And that takes us to a challenge that many local authorities have, which is we don't know all of our children who are privately fostered. Some people may be privately fostering children, they don't realise that they're privately fostering children. There'll be children in schools who access GPs, who have health visitors and others where agencies may or may not recognise that children are being privately fostered. And may or may not understand their duties and responsibilities to refer those into the local authority for assessment and support. So having recognised that, both myself and Jane Bulmer from Redcar and Cleveland worked together through the STSCP to raise some awareness locally. So we've put a lot of information out through social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, through the Middlesbrough Children Matters web pages on a routine and regular basis. We have posters that we've briefed through our designated safeguarding lead forum and through our safeguarding information officers. So we've worked very closely with our colleagues in education and schools. We have a private fostering steering group, and on that sits the police and colleagues from health and others. So we are trying to raise awareness, certainly across the professional network, and we want to raise more awareness through the community. And that's where my ask from board members and certainly from councillors is, how can we raise awareness better in Middlesbrough? How can we get the message out into communities, particularly into our very diverse communities where children may be privately fostered, so that they understand there is support available, and to refer into us. At the moment, there are still only 4 children who are privately fostered that we're aware of in Middlesbrough. So it's a challenge. It's a national challenge. It's not unique to Middlesbrough. But I would, with the permission of Chair, like to seek, perhaps here for you, not here, but for you to reflect on and possibly, if Chair's in agreement, through Susie or others, any ideas and any support that you might be able to offer to us to raise awareness of private fostering across our communities, so that we can to get that support in place for those children who are in those arrangements. And that is my report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ben. Got any questions for Ben? Councillor Udin?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, can I just ask, how do you differentiate between the private fostering and connected persons fostering?
So a private fostering arrangement is essentially where a family make their own arrangement. So, a young person may go and stay with a very close friend of a parent. It's an arrangement that they entirely make themselves for personal reasons, whatever they may be. And a connected carers arrangement is when, as a local authority, we're proactively involved in facilitating that arrangement because we've identified that arrangement needs to happen. So one is a private matter, the other one is where the local authority has been involved because we may have worries or want to make a different arrangement for a whole host of different reasons.
Right, okay. Can I just, there's a question, please, Chair, yeah? Can I ask?
Come back, Councillor Udin.
Yeah, okay, thank you. With the private fostering, then obviously they have to go through all the processes as well once they are known and they have a child placed, they arranged, but would they go through the whole process again?
So it's a different process. So essentially, once the referral comes into the local authority, an assessment is undertaken to check the suitability of that arrangement and identify if there is any support that may be required from children's services or elsewhere. And those children will continue to be supported as children in need.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sue, did you want to come in on that?
Chair, Councillor Davison, mine's only a sort of ending comment, so I'm happy for other people to be to have their contribution first.
Councillor Davison.
Yes, thank you for that, Chair. If these young people are eventually identified to you, where are you finding that these identifications are coming from? Where do you get the information from? How's it found out?
So from a whole host of different places. So it may be when a health visitor is aware of what a private fostering arrangement is and identifies it, they may refer that child in. Of those children, and there are only 4, of those children that we are aware of, those referrals tend to come in from schools because the schools see them every day. They're aware of those arrangements. So schools, know our children really well.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Carl, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I was just wondering how it's how you deal with this with some communities. My first thought was to say like a travelling community. How on earth do you know which children there come under this arrangement in a travelling community arrangement?
We haven't had any referrals from in the travelling community for private fostering. There is a whole range of support out there of specialist services that work with travelling communities, for example, particularly when camps are set up. But in terms of private fostering, we haven't had any referrals from travelling communities. So if there are ideas from board, then they would be very welcome.
Okay.
Further questions?
No.
I just have one thing to say, Ben, and actually, we've all got Facebook pages. I mean, Facebook is a very, very powerful thing. We've all got Facebook pages, so if you can send us some link or video or just even a written format that you would like us to put on our Facebook pages, I'm sure we'd all be pleased to do that. And
Thank you.
I think every councillor, there's only one councillor I know that hasn't got a Facebook page. So, I mean, it's quite powerful, that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful.
Sue?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's an excellent idea, Facebook. So thank you. I suppose it's just me coming in and saying, I can't believe, and I'm sure nobody around this virtual table can believe, that there's only 4 children in Middlesbrough not living with their family, their close family. There must be, there must be more. So it is about very much how we get out to there, that they need to notify the local authority. And that shouldn't be a scary thing to do. We just need to make sure that the child is safe. And I think that after a set period of time, it's only 6 monthly that we visit. So it really shouldn't be an intrusive, but it's just part of our duty to make sure that child is safe and well. So it is something that I'm quite passionate about, but 4 out of Middlesbrough's children just does seem far too low. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sue. And obviously I think people shouldn't be frightened to come forward, because there is the things we can help with, and like you say, so it's making sure that the children are looked after properly. But even if somebody is a little bit worried about coming forward, we can give them some help and offer some help with this. So I think it's something that people should hopefully come forward with. So thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you, Ben. With that, we'll move on. We've got item number 10, complaints made about by children looked after, and we're going to Siobhan for this, please.
Hi there. So the report that I've completed considers any complaint made regarding a child in care. we actually get very low numbers of complaints made by children themselves or via an advocate. We do this on a monthly basis within my service. One of the roles that I've got is to chair a learning meeting where we pull together learning from any complaints. And we consider as part of that, have children made complaints? Are children in our care when complaints have been made, and what are the learning themes? So what I've done for the purposes of today is review the last 6 months. So over the past 6 months, just to give you some numbers, 72 complaints were made between September 21 and February 22. Of those, 14 were in relation to children in our care. Of those 14 complaints, 2 were upheld and 1 was partially upheld. All the complaints made regarding children in our care in the past 6 months were completed in timescales. All of the complaints were made by parents and guardians, and they were all resolved at stage 1. Within the contents of my report, I've put some more details about what each complaint was made in relation to, but I'm conscious with it being such small numbers that actually need to be sensitive around confidentiality and making sure that those young people are not identifiable by there being such small numbers. What I did do was consider the complaints in relation to what we know from wider themes, from the complaints report, which has been produced from 18 to 21, but also what we see on a monthly basis. So the key themes in terms of learning from complaints are around communication, perceived lack of financial support for a child or young person, and that might be around payments being made to a carer of a child who's in our care, and accuracy of recorded information about a child or young person or the parents. And that was not just relevant for those children in our care, but it's relevant across the whole service. And they're 3 of the priorities that we discuss on a monthly basis in what we call a learning meeting. So the learning meeting that I chair every month pulls together and analyses learning from practice. It considers complaints, thematic overview of IRO challenge, audit and the audit to excellence findings, Futures for Families deep dives and any reviews ongoing within the Safeguarding Partnership, subject access to requests. And quite helpfully last month, Kathy joined us from Participation People to give us some direct feedback from our Children in Care Council about what their experiences were, what they would like to see done differently. And I understand, I'm not sure if Kathy's presented it today or has in the past, but has produced a report on, you said, and we're working on what we will do in response to that. So the purpose of the meeting is to ensure that where there are themes emerging about quality of practice, that we can be responsive to this and do it quickly. So part of my role is to develop a training programme for staff across the whole of children's services, as well as opening that offer up to partnership. And we're in discussions next about how we bring that to Corporate Parenting Board as well, in terms of including our Children and Young People Care Leaver Forum to deliver training on communicating with children and young people as well. So as part of that, on a monthly basis, when we pull together the analysis and we identify themes like the 3 that I've mentioned to you today, we'll then talk about, okay, so what needs to be done and how do we do it in response to these. So over the past 6 months to a year, while I've been in post and chairing this meeting, there's been a few different things that we've done to respond to complaints made in relation to children in care, as well as children across the whole service. So we did an audit. So we carried out an audit where children themselves had made a complaint to look to see whether, following the complaint being made, there was some impact as a result. Again, it was really small numbers. There was only 1 child who'd made a complaint themselves, but we checked in to make sure that things had changed following the complaint being made and being upheld. We've had discussions with Participation People. Yesterday it was me and Kathy had a chat about how do we encourage children to be able to give feedback rather than feeling like they need to do it through a formal complaints process. And we know that our audit is also opened up that opportunity for children and young people to give feedback on a regular basis. It might be that they're discouraged from making formal complaints, but actually we still want to hear what they've got to say and we still want to be able to respond to it. So Kathy or Participation People are now invited to attend the learning meeting regularly. Whenever they've got anything that they can feedback to us, an audit will give us feedback from children and young people. We've piloted a mystery shopper approach to tackling concerns around communication that are being raised through complaints. So Xavier, who's on the call here, called our front door match he was calling as a young person to make a referral and was taken through the process that anybody would when they ring into the front door. And he was then asked at the end of that to kind of give a view on his experience of the communication, how it was handled, and the outcome of that was really positive. So we're now looking at in the learning meeting at ways that we can roll that out across the whole service to help us with tackling communication and sending key messages to our staff about the findings from those mystery shopper approaches. We've got something we called Hot Topics. So every Monday between 1 and 2 p.m, there's an open session for everyone in Children's Services. Again, partners are welcome, where if we find anything coming out of complaints or the learning meeting generally, we'll feed it straight into that hot topic so we can be really responsive to anything, any key messages that we need to get back to staff. One of the key reasons that we've said as a theme about complaints being made is about accuracy of recording, making sure records are kept up to date, so that when complaints are being responded to, all the information people need is there on the record. So we've got a plan in place for our complaints team to come and deliver some of those messages to our staff in a hot topic session. We had practice week, which I mentioned earlier, with a focus on language communication and identity. So that was a lot around communicating with children and young people. And again, going back to the point I was making about children and young people not making many complaints themselves, we want to make sure that that process is accessible as possible for them. So we've developed with the complaints team a child-friendly leaflet, and I know Xavier and Tia both had a look at it for us as well, just to make sure it was youth-proof and accessible. But again, the IROs, the independent reviewing officers, whenever they do their independent reviews of a child's care plan, they will check with a child or young person to make sure they know how to make a complaint if they want to. And they also check to make sure they've got access to an advocate to support them through that process if they need to. So next steps in terms of this for us is me and Kathy, I think, getting our heads back together to work with our Audit to Excellence service and others who attend the learning meeting to think about how do we encourage the voice of our children and young people without them feeling the need to make a complaint. So we're still getting that feedback which helps us then with improving the quality of practice. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, and whenever we identify themes, as I say, they are feeding straight into our learning development offer for staff. Would anybody like to ask any questions?
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, Councillor Udin.
Yeah, thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, what I was going to say actually, with the young children complaining, I think they're at the reluctancy because they feel quite loyal to their carers, loyal to their workers. I mean, if they need to complain, and they don't get sort of encouraged. So I think, as you said, they need to be encouraged. I think that's quite important. You know, they need to be encouraged. They need to be obviously, told, and that the training course, I think, will help a great deal. You know. Thank you very much. That's what I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Udin. Councillor Davidson.
Could you explain to us exactly where the age groups are that you find that make the complaints? Children, what age groups do you find are the main complainants?
So we've only actually had one complaint from a young person in the past 12 months. That young person was a teenager. And the numbers are so low, it would be difficult to give you a broader picture than that. But I suspect it's highly likely that those young people making the complaints, if they're doing it directly themselves, are likely to be old enough to access the complaints process. Any younger children are likely to be done via an advocate, which all children in care have access to.
I'm quite pleased to hear that the complaints aren't high, but I'm really concerned that if children need to make a complaint or need to talk to somebody, that there would be somebody there for them.
Yeah, so all children and young people in care have an advocate. So if there's any concerns that they don't agree with or they're not happy with, perhaps where they're living or the plan, the independent reviewing officer has a responsibility to check and make sure they've got access to an advocate who can then make a complaint on their behalf if they needed to. The role of the independent reviewing officer would also be to challenge if the views and wishes of the children are not being responded to. So hopefully some of those issues can be ironed out without getting to the point of a complaints process. But I think what we don't want is children feeling discouraged by a formal complaints process and need to have that opportunity to be able to express the views in other ways. So as I say, the audit feedback, including children and young people, which has happened over the last few months, is a really good step forward. and I'll be working with participation people to kind of consider next steps with that as well.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? I've just got one thing to say, and I'm absolutely thrilled by the mystery shopper. I think that's a brilliant idea. So well done, Xavier, and obviously got good feedback. But yeah, I think we should keep doing that on all departments, to be honest. All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, and the next item is Kathy Peacock for participation of children and young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm also joined by Xavier. So we're going to do a bit of a double act, I think, hopefully. So hopefully I met everybody at the last Corporate Parenting Board. For those who I haven't met, my name's Kathy Peacock and I work for an organisation called Participation People. And I started in November last year to support Middlesbrough Council to engage more with their care experienced young people. So to date, we have re-established the two care experience groups. One's called the Children in Care Council, and for those who are observant, we have changed the age of the young people who would now attend that group. We decided it's going to be broadened out a bit further, so it's 10 to 17-year-olds who are welcome to join that group. We also have a Care Leavers Forum for care experienced young adults between the ages of 18 and 25. So those groups are running on a weekly basis. The kick runs on a Tuesday night at 5:30 till 7 o'clock. And on a Thursday night, we have the Care Leavers Forum at the same time. So over to Xavier.
Yeah, so the youth update for March. The young people have been currently designing and delivering celebrations event on the 24th of February. 6 young people attended, but we've gotten to know all the young people a bit more better now, a bit about the personalities, a bit more in depth. We did a music session, which was really good, and Victoria Banks actually came in and helped us out a little bit with the session. So that was quite good. We've worked on what they want from a new social worker. So when a new social worker comes in, they've been talking about what they actually want in a new social worker, what they would actually like in a new social worker. Working on what they need to reach their education, training, and employment goals. So that's with the older two young people as well. So we've been having a look at their future employment, what they actually want to do, but also with the younger ones, what they want to do after school, what's their ambitions, what's their goals. So they also have came up with questions for Your Voice survey, which we have distributed out. So the young persons came up with questions such as health, mental health, education, just things that would go in your annual report of what a young person actually wants. So also 3 of the young people have went on a residential in Doncaster, and we met up with participation people and all the rest of the team, and about I think 60 other young people from around the country from different projects like themselves. And one of the young lads got achievement for making them most friends, which we were happy about and he was ecstatic about, so that was great. And we've also had recently a meeting with the Children's Commissioner Office to tell them about Helping at Hand website, what they actually think and what they actually want to do with, and how it would be accessible for more young people to know the rights that they've actually got as a young person in care. We've also written some questions to yourselves about what it's like to live live in Middlesbrough, but also like how it is in care. And we're currently coming up with a fun engagement event that will take place in April about football, because young people are football fanatics and they never stop talking about it. So over to you, Kathy.
Well, first of all, what happened last night at the group, Xavier? Did we have 2 guests?
Yeah, we had Ofsted in yesterday, which was quite daunting, but it was good. I made them homemade spaghetti bolognese, cooked by myself. And then we had a few activities, and the young people just enjoyed themselves, to be honest. And they knew quite a lot about about the group and how good the groups are, and they just talked like how social workers are brilliant and how they talk about the IROs. So, and we got some really good feedback from Ofsted. So over to you, Kathy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So that's the KIC Council. So we also had the Care Leavers Forum. All members of the Care Leavers Forum attended the celebration event that Participation People helped organise, and that was in Falk on the Road. They had food, we had various caricaturist, we had certificates that we gave out to all the young people. We had a raffle on the night, and it was really well attended, and really good feedback from the managers who came along to that event, and the counsellors, and the young people really enjoyed themselves. So that's something that we're going to be looking at putting on again this year. They've also worked on, what happens is we have the meeting with the Children in Care Council, and we do a piece of work, and then we take it to the Care Leavers Forum to build on that piece of work, to get some more views of children and young people as well. So they also looked at, if you were going to have a change of social worker, a new social worker, what would the process be to you have a new social worker? So they identified that once you're told that your current worker is going to leave, then the new worker will be introduced by the old social worker. They'll maybe take you out, have a chat with you about, you know, your interests, your ambitions, your goals, what's important to you, and things like that. And the new social worker will make sure that anything that's been identified in the plan that has to be acted upon, we'll put that as a priority and make sure these things are done. So I'm working with Siobhan about making sure that this is part of the kind of the social work practice. So it's just the norm that people will be doing on a regular basis. So that's really good. Again, we're working with them about accessing education, training and employment. How would they want to receive that information? Do they want it as a text message? Sure, we'll put it on the Every Child Matters website to let them know. So they're helping us around things like that, which is really good. They also looked at the questions that are in the Your Voice survey. There's particular things around kind of goals, you know, and people identifying what your strengths are and celebrating with you. So this survey is live now. So we want to make sure as many looked after children and care leavers complete it as much as possible. And hopefully I can come back to that meeting, or a colleague of mine can in the council, to report on the messages back from young people, and then what we're going to do with what they're telling us. We did have a special meeting with the corporate parents where 3 young people, including Xavier, told their stories about what it's like growing up in Middlesbrough. I think the session went really well. Chair, I don't know if you want to come in at this point to talk about your experience of that meeting.
Thanks, Kathy. I did get some very, very positive feedback on that. People were absolutely really, really pleased with what we've done there. And yes, it did go very, very well indeed. And members who you didn't think would come back actually did come back. So it opened the eyes of members who hadn't really gone into young people and things. So yeah, I really like to thank the young people for doing that. It was a really, really good experience. Thank you, Kathy.
That's really, really good to hear, and I'll certainly feed that back to the young people. They really do want to be involved in the corporate parents. And Xavier, on the previous slide, we talked about that they've actually written some questions that they'd like to put to the corporate parents. So maybe this is something that we can kind of create to set up another particular meeting or something, Chair, to invite some councillors along and ask those questions. That would be really good, and vice versa, you could ask them questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So they also had a virtual meeting with the Children's Commissioner Office as well, to help them understand about the Help at Hand website and getting information out to young people. We've got the questions that I've just mentioned, and they helped create a session around language that cares, and delivered that during the social care week a couple of weeks ago. So we had a number of social workers come along to hear the messages about the language that young people want professionals to use when they're supporting young people. So in terms of the overall, we've been very busy actually. So apart from running the two groups on a weekly basis, Xavier ran a neurodiversity session at the Designated Teacher Conference. I think that went down very well, Xavier. I think you enjoyed it.
Yeah, very much.
Very much so.
And that was also with Tia.
Yes, it was with Tia. Yes. We helped deliver the celebration event. Xavier and somebody else from Participation People, Alice, ran a session at the Parents for Change conference on co-production, and we're writing a report at the moment around the feedback that we got from parents at that conference. We've been part of the SEND Youth Voice Conference that happened on the 21st and 23rd of March. So we ran sessions at 5 settings for young people with SEND, and we're going to collate all the information that we've got from the young people, and a report will be prepared at some point. So that was really good. I met with the Foster Care Association about doing some collaborating. They put on a lot of social events for foster families to come together. They're going to the Teesside Princess, I think, on Sunday. Foster carers and their children and families can come along to events like that. So it's making sure that the message around the youth voice groups and the fantastic opportunities that we're creating is known as far and wide as we possibly can. So going along to those events would be, something that we're going to start doing. And to say the survey is now live, that we need to promote it as much as possible. And the last couple of slides, which I won't go through because I think everyone's got a copy of these, is just what we do is a roadmap. So we identify the key things that we're going to be creating over the next 6 months or so. So we're still developing those and creating these wonderful events.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Kathy. Before I go over to any questions, I'm just going to ask Tia. I know you're still on the line, Tia. Have you got anything that you want to add to that?
No, I'm not really part of the kicks or anything. It's Xavier tells me a bit about them and he asks me questions, but I'm not really part of that.
Okay, that's all right. I just don't want to leave you out because I know it is important that our young people are involved, and it's very important to me, to be honest, that our young people are involved. So I didn't want to leave Tia out. So I'll go over now. Any questions from any members? Can't see any hands up. No. So there you are, Kathy. You've got a really easy there. So thank you to Kathy and Xavier for that little presentation. I'm really pleased with the things that are going there on there, and things seem to be moving now, Xavier, where they were at a standstill at the beginning. I think they've now picked up, and obviously you're working on things that people actually want, which will encourage them even more. So for me, that is a really good positive step. Item number 12, I'm just going to play you a little video before we finish. Some of you have seen this before, but I'm told it's a very strong video, even though I'm on it and I don't know whether it's that strong or not, but people are telling me it's really good. So can we share that video, please, Susie?
Right, this is a story about a little boy with cerebral palsy.
Can I just check everybody could hear that?
Yeah.
Lovely, brilliant, thank you.
He's a little boy from a primary school, and all his peers were all going out on a cross-country run. He decided that he would like to go with them, so the teacher agreed, thinking he would just go and watch the cross-country run. When they all got to where they were doing the run, the little boy decided and spoke to the teacher and said he would wanted to run as well. Now, the little boy, obviously with cerebral palsy, finds it difficult to walk, so the teacher was a little bit worried about him going on the run. However, that was what he wanted to do. He was determined, proper determined little man who would go on this run. So she decided to let him go. A little girl who was stood near and heard the conversation said that she would go with him all the way. She wasn't really bothered about being up at the front. She would just go with him all the way, and she did. So they all went off on the cross-country run, and as you can imagine, all his peers got back before him. They were watching for him coming and eventually saw him. And they decided among themselves to make 2 lines to encourage him to get to the finish line. And that's exactly what they did. They made 2 lines, a guard of honour, to get him through. And as they saw him coming, and as soon as he touched the 2 lines, they started cheering and cheering until he got to the finish line. And then there was a great hooray. This little boy had managed to get there, and it was a really good success for him as he'd managed to struggle all that way. Now, as corporate parents, this is what we should be doing. We should be encouraging our young people to come through those 2 lines, through that guard of honour, to get them to that finish line. And I hope that is what we can do, to give them that hooray at the end, and let's get them there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Susie. And even though it was my little story, I still get emotional about that story, to be honest. I still, the tears are pricking in my eyes now because it is quite an emotional story. So I hope you all enjoyed that. That leaves me to bring the session to an end. And all I've got to say now is if there's any people out there watching who would like to be foster parents, who would like to look at adopting, please get in touch with the council. If you've listened to this today, you understand that we are still looking for foster parents. We are still looking for people to adopt, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. So I would just say goodbye to everybody for this afternoon, and thank you all for your input. It has been a really, really good meeting. Thank you. Goodbye.